Join me in a quick daydream. Close your eyes, imagine rolling hills and vineyards, a glass in your hand, and nowhere that you need to be. It sounds pretty dreamy, right? And if you want to make that dream a reality, head to Dundee. It's in the heart of Oregon's Willamette Valley, home of great wine and, most importantly, laid-back vibes. Right now, Travel Dundee is offering a spring discount for CityCast listeners. Visit traveldundee.com/citycast to unlock exclusive lodging promo codes for your next stay this spring. That's traveldundee.com/citycast. This is CityCast Seattle. I'm Jane C. Hu, and here's what Seattle's talking about. Soon, students in Seattle Public Schools will be getting free meals. We'll break down Mayor Wilson's latest announcement about our city's investments in education. Plus, we're chatting about the Seattle Black Film Festival, and for our CityCast Seattle neighbors, in honor of Neighbor Day on May 2nd, we have a special bonus segment about the most neighborly things that we've seen in Seattle. But first, if you're clocking in for an 8-hour workday, you can thank labor activists for that one. Today is the 140th anniversary of the May Day that brought us the standard 8-hour workday as we know it now. On Saturday, May 1st, in 1886, thousands of workers went on strike and attended rallies held throughout the United States. It's estimated somewhere between 300 and 500,000 people showed up for that. Joining us to talk about the modern labor scene here in Seattle is Liz Ford, Associate Professor of Law at Seattle University. Welcome, Liz.
Thank you for having me.
So you teach the Workers' Rights Clinic, where your students provide representation to low-wage workers, advocate for stronger worker protections, and develop minimum standards. People making under $70K here get free consultations, which I thought was interesting. Right. I mean, yes. I know a lot of people making under $70K here in Seattle. But what are the common questions you hear from people who are seeking these consultations or that your students are encountering as people come to these clinics?
Yeah, unfortunately, the answer to that is easy. The vast majority of people that we talk to, many times not being paid at all, and oftentimes being paid less than what the law requires in Seattle and in Washington State. And the reason for that is simple but sad. It has to do with power and the allocation of leverage between employers and employees.
I can imagine situations in which wage theft is purposeful versus accidental, just because, you know, if you're a small business, maybe it's hard to navigate the rules around this. Or if you're a big business, maybe you think no one's going to come after you. I guess what are the structural issues at play here, or like the big themes that you're seeing?
Right. We try to think of it in the bigger context, the purpose of the labor movement, which is to reallocate leverage in a way that sort of starts to close that gap, and in that way allows an environment where forming a union is more possible, where negotiating your wages is more possible. We are fairly far from that at this point. But as I was preparing for this conversation, I was thinking about the kind of those bigger questions and why are we so far from that? And so I wanted to share with you a couple of stats. We know that workers who don't have a union now, about 50% of them, when asked, say that they would choose a union if they had that choice. Been polls about sort of approval ratings for unions, and those are up around 60%, 70% if you're talking to people between 18 and 35. And then the depressing statistic, which is that among private sector workers, the rate of unionization is about 6%.
Whew.
Yeah. So the question is like, why? Why is that happening? And some answers to that include the sort of traditional organizing structures. The laws that allow for organizing aren't working. They aren't working well for workers. And the other dynamic at work is that we have such broad levels of income inequality that the gap between most workers and most like businesses is so broad that workers don't feel in a set of appreciable abilities to counter that.
6%. Sorry, I'm still stuck on that. That's
Yeah, yeah,
so low. I
it
mean,
is.
there have been some very public fights here in town around workers'
Mm-hmm.
rights. Specifically,
Mm-hmm.
I think the big ones lately have been Starbucks and REI
Mm-hmm.
employees trying to unionize. And
Right.
it gives me the sense in general, maybe this is also my bias being a journalist and seeing a lot of my colleagues at other organizations unionizing, but it feels like participation is at least increasing. But in looking at the stats from the Bureau of Labor, it seems like overall union participation has fallen nationwide in the last 40 or so years. But is that different in Seattle? Like, has union participation changed here over time?
Yeah, I think in Seattle, we've seen a sustained campaign over at least the last decade to kind of get us here. And so while I haven't looked at the comparisons nationally versus Washington as far as union density, I share your perception that feels like something's happening here. There's been a lot of organizing of certainly Starbucks locations and restaurants and small cafes and tech workers and sort of people starting to feel that sense that it's possible. And I do think it comes back to our work. It comes back to the kinds of minimum standards that Seattle and Washington have enacted.
Yeah, speaking of minimums, I
Yeah.
feel like Seattle is very known now as the city that first adopted a $15 minimum wage. And it's been interesting to see how business owners, especially big businesses, have reacted to that. Like, for instance, I think most recently I've been seeing Lyft and Uber responding to drivers who want more rights as saying that, the reason why fares are so high here is because we've got this $15 minimum wage and that could actually hurt business in some way. What have we seen about how these changes have actually shaped the city's economy?
One of the things that's important to notice about those reactions is that they're cyclical. Let's go back to 2015 or so when Seattle enacted its minimum wage. There was huge, concern about, will this actually decrease employment? Will businesses leave the city? That hasn't happened. All right. So again, what's happened with Uber and Lyft is there's another set of what we sometimes call sectoral protections, but the idea is you create a minimum standard for a particular industry, unique to that industry. And that's what's happened with Uber and Lyft. So both Seattle enacted a set of minimum standards, and this was a while back, and then the state did the same. And the response first was to insert these sort of surcharges on rides that really reflected nothing other than a discomfort with the existence of this minimum standards. And then a sort of a lot of talk of, it's going to be so much more expensive, we're going to leave. The increase in expense really was attributable mostly to these surcharges. And I do also think it's important to keep examining, like with numbers, how these changes are affecting the economy. But so far, it has not slowed us down. And if we want to create an affordable city, we've got to do a bunch of things, including lifting the minimums and including thinking about the unique needs, the unique constraints of particular industries, and maybe creating a place for the workers and the owners in that industry to come together and talk. That's what the Uber and Lyft law is designed to do. That's what the domestic worker law in Seattle is designed to do. So that is possible.
So, for people who are interested in either learning more about their rights as a contractor or a freelancer, or
Yep.
exploring unionizing within their workplace,
Yeah.
what would you recommend?
Well, first, the Workers' Rights Clinic that I teach offers free consultations, as you said, for workers who make less than $70,000 a year. And it's an opportunity to talk to a lawyer or law student and get some information about your rights and your options. We can certainly advise you about which might be the right union to talk to. But I think one thing that's important for everybody to know is that you have a right to talk with your coworkers about what you get paid. You have a right to come together with your coworkers, and if you want to, talk to the boss, raise issues. And if the employer fires you for that, that's illegal under federal law and under state law.
Retaliation? I'm not a law student,
Yeah,
but
it is. Yeah.
unfortunately, this happens enough that we hear that term all too often.
Retaliation, that's the term.
Well, Liz Ford, if folks want to learn more about your work or the Workers' Rights Clinic, where can they go to find more info?
The Seattle University School of Law website, you just Google Workers' Rights Clinic, Seattle University, will come right up. On that website, there's some basic information about your rights as a worker. And then there's the ability to fill out a web form if you'd like to have a free consultation. I will say one note of caution. We are at the end of the semester, which means that summer is coming and I have no law students. So, so we will be doing consultations starting in August.
Good to know. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Liz.
Of course, it was fun.
Hey Seattle, if you've ever wanted to see our Pacific Northwest whales, this is your moment. FRS Clipper Whale Watching is the only whale and wildlife tour departing from right in downtown Seattle. And this year, for their 40th anniversary, they're launching a brand new catamaran, the Emerald Clipper. It was built right here in Washington State, and it's designed for comfort and incredible views with spacious outdoor decks, floor-to-ceiling windows, and onboard naturalists who help you actually understand what you're seeing aboard this floating classroom. Out on the Salish Sea, you might encounter humpbacks feeding, killer whales hunting, gray whales cruising, plus bald eagles and seals and sea lions. It's not just a tour, it's a full wildlife experience. And they have a whale sighting guarantee, so if you don't see whales, you'll get a complimentary tour to use in the future. Spots fill quickly as the season ramps up, so don't wait. In fact, Sam and I have already booked our trip, and we cannot wait. You can book early too. Just go to whalewatching.com. That's whalewatching.com.
Seattle's tastiest tradition is back. Seattle Restaurant Week is happening April 19th to May 2nd, and for 2 weeks, diners are invited to explore our diverse and innovative local food scene. This year, there are over 260 restaurants participating, and they're offering special curated menus highlighting their signature dishes and chef's picks. These menus are priced at $20, $35, $50, and $65, so you can find a restaurant, bar, cafe, food truck, or pop-up across the greater Seattle area that fits your budget, or maybe it just gives you an excuse to splurge a little bit. Personally, I love having a reason to explore new spots, and eating out during Restaurant Week supports our entire local food economy, in addition to the restaurants themselves, the producers, and food purveyors that they source from. Participating locations are also donating portions of their proceeds towards free community meals. Head to srweek.org to see an up-to-date listing of all participating restaurants and, most importantly, their menus. On Tuesday, Mayor Wilson announced new investments in childcare, free school meals, healthcare for students, and post-graduation employment pathways. Here to discuss, our resident parent, creative producer Liam Billingham.
Are you guys cold? It's time to put on a jacket. That's just what you say as a parent all the time.
Mm-hmm. And we have Marcus Harrison Green, founder of the South Seattle Emerald in Hinton Publishing and co-host of the podcast In the Meanwhile. Welcome, Marcus.
Such a pleasure, Jane.
So, okay, some highlights of this new announcement. All students are going to receive free breakfast and lunch. This expands the preschool program to cover a 10-hour day, and it runs all year instead of only going to 2 or 3 p.m., which is a common complaint I hear from parents. There are going to be 600 new preschool seats and expanding to 3,100 seats in the next 4 years. It's also going to double the capacity of the city's childcare subsidy program. There are going to be new school-based health centers where students can get free primary care and dental health. And there are going to be apprenticeship programs that connect young people to trades like construction, welding, maritime, because this is Seattle. What were your reactions upon hearing about these changes? Are you all going to be affected by them at all?
Well, I just first got to say, Jane, I'm so glad CityCast is talking about this story because it seemed like every other news outlet was like, oh, there was a shooting. And then I think she was talking about something with kids or something. Anyway, moving on. But yeah, it's like, no, this is pretty impactful, I got to say. I have a couple of friends who are both medical doctors who live in the Beacon Hill area, and they have 2 children. And they tell me all the time they're barely being able to afford childcare with 2 revenue streams. And yet, their childcare for the 2 kids is almost $4,000, which is much more than their mortgage. And so if they...
Monthly, you mean?
Monthly, excuse me. Yes, monthly. I can only imagine for folks who don't have the same sort of economic stability that they have, how this is going to impact and affect those people for the better.
$4K a month is like, I think, at least from what I'm hearing from friends, kind of the median almost. I definitely know people who pay more. I know a few people who pay less because they've got some workarounds. But yeah, Liam, you say yep.
Yeah, I mean, my son is in full-time daycare or preschool because he's not of school age yet. And that's like around $3,000 a month. And then my daughter is in 2nd grade. So we most of the day is taking care of that. But school ends at 2:25 Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and 1:10 on Wednesdays. So she goes to the community center for a couple hours, 3 days a week, and then does like classes. She's old enough now that like if she gets out at 3:30, she can kind of do her homework and entertain herself. So we're exiting that round of it. But like daycare here or any kind of childcare is like crazy expensive. And then when you have slightly older kids, it's like a little bit of patchwork to save money. It definitely... is a strain both financially and then kind of on your brain to make sure, what time am I picking them up? Where are they going to be? That kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, even when I was a kid, I remember in elementary school doing various after school programs because both of my parents worked full time and, either having to get in like a weird church van, listening to Melissa Etheridge, going to like a church after school program, or just like
come to my daycare.
Literally.
Yeah, exactly.
No,
this explains so much about you, Jane. So much.
The guy who drove that van like had great taste, and I learned a lot about rock music in those years. I think that's the first time I heard Pearl Jam. So that was my introduction to Seattle without even realizing it. But it's kind of wild to me that, that many years later, we still are trying to figure out the best way to make sure there's like a smooth off-ramp for kids to do things after school. Because, like if we're doing a 9-to-5 workday, I've never understood how that's supposed to line up with school time.
I think it also contributes a lot to safety, to be honest with you, particularly with kids. We've talked about, young people and them being idle and so forth, and that potentially leading to them, getting into some activities that aren't the best. The fact that they now have activities available to them past the hours of 2:00, this could, maybe hopefully, mitigate them getting into sort of either involvement with gang activity or things like that. And I know that there definitely been plenty of parents who have said that's what they're looking forward to with this levy. My mother is somebody who works with kinship caregivers. For those who don't know, those are essentially grandmothers who are raising their grandchildren because the biological parent is out of the way. And they will tell you, they have the energy of an 80-year-old and they're trying to raise, kids with the attention span of a lightning bolt. I mean, they just cannot do it by themselves. And so having these public options available to them are truly, as somebody told me, life-saving. So.
Yeah, and I think it speaks like these programs aren't just to watch the kid. They're also a form of socialization, right? Because
Totally.
I think part of the trouble raising kids now is that like, if my daughter just comes home, she's going to be like, iPad now?
Yes,
yes. A little bit of that is fine, especially like if we're just trying to kill 30 minutes. But like these after school programs, she meets kids from other schools. She sort of has to like listen to other adults to tell her what to do. And like, I think these programs help teach like flexibility and tolerance just in the fact that you like, in some of these programs in a good way have to entertain yourself. Like you're in the room. Yeah. Okay, find something to do, draw a picture, do your homework. And I think
use your imagination. Yes.
I also think this like free lunch, breakfast and lunch is a huge deal. Not only because like some kids may not have access to it at home, but like that has saved our butt on mornings when our kids won't get out of bed.
And I think it also touches on, affordability, and that's what the mayor ran on. And ultimately, particularly a mayor of a city is very limited in what they can and can't control when it comes to affordability. I mean, they can't necessarily control the prices of food nor of housing or what have you, but they can control access to free resources such as free lunch.
Yeah. As I understand it, before you could apply to receive free meals for your kids if you met certain USDA standards. And I'm actually looking at the table. So for a family of 3, your yearly gross income would need to be under 50K. And for a family of 4, it would need to be under 60K. And I mean, it seems like it's complicated to even just navigate to this table, probably fill out an application. The fact that they're just going to have this be available seems like a potential improvement just in the there's an ambiguity that is now removed where it's like whoever wants this can have this.
Yeah.
Well, and the fact too that they're, with the preschool stuff, that it's, very much impacting kids, at those critical ages of 0 to 5 years old. I mean, that is the most crucial time for children. I think it's 90% of their brain development occurs during that time period, where you have more than 1 million neural connections that are formed. And so to be able to have that focus, I mean, that very much does set you up for life. I know it's cliche, but it's a true cliche.
I was also thinking about all of the cuts to other early childcare programs that have been made over the last few months. So during this year's legislative session, there was a 25% cut to a transition to preschool program. And also there's some changing policies right now that are making it harder for parent educators in Seattle to get the certifications that they need to keep co-op preschools open. So, I mean, I don't know that this necessarily offsets it. It feels like, this is obviously touching on different parts of education and not just focusing on that early childhood education period. But it does sound like a way for Seattle to try and bridge the gap a little bit, to at least add some seats to the preschools, to add some other benefits and resources for students, even if things are being cut on a county or state level.
Yeah, and it is a step right in the right direction. I mean, I don't think it's the panacea at all. That said, it does still need to go to our city council. And so I'm hopeful that there'll be at least 6 votes there. We shall see.
It does feel like at a moment when jobs are, frankly, disappearing in tech at a large rate in this city, people need all the help that they can get, no matter what they do. And something that sort of brings all of these together is really good. And I also want to highlight there's going to be mental health care open to these kids. And, as a parent of a kid who got through COVID, I think most parents can say they can sort of see how that period might manifest in their behavior and their socialization. So the fact that those opportunities could be available through school for free is very, very positive. As long as Let's Go Washington doesn't, try to get access to those records as well.
Yeah, and I do say that it does expand right into the mental health counseling does expand into young adults as well, which I think is important, particularly right now as, there's this quote unquote crisis of young men, but it's really a crisis of young people.
And no parent can handle that on their own, no matter how their means or whatever. So I just think the more options, the more we normalize that kind of stuff for young adults, it's very, very positive.
You know what they say? It takes a village. And I know that that's so cheesy, but I think it's true.
And if you can afford a home, you can afford to help get people through this, help.
And you already voted for it. So,
Gotcha.
All right. Well, like Marcus said, the city council is expected to vote on this plan in June, and we'll see what folks have to say about it and if there are any open questions that arise from the council discussing it. But all right, let's take a break. Liam, we're going to say goodbye to you for now.
Okay.
And we're going to see you in the bonus segment.
Can you say goodbye in Elvish, though, before
No, I cannot, and I refuse.
Get out of here, you Boston fanboy.
Bye, Liam.
Marcus, I thought we were going somewhere with this Elvish thing. Forget it.
And when we come back, we're going to talk about the Seattle Black Film Festival. It is Friday again. Thank goodness. I feel like I am so ready for it to be the weekend. And joining us to talk about the most exciting thing happening this weekend, clearly, the Seattle Black Film Festival, is Jas Moultrie, the development manager for the Langston Theater, which is hosting this film festival. Welcome, Jas.
Thank you so much. Thank y'all for the invitation. I'm happy to be here.
So, okay, tell us about the Seattle Black Film Festival. How long has it been around? What are you excited about for this year's festival?
We're celebrating its 23rd year. I first got to experience it last year, and it was absolutely incredible. The thing I'm most excited about is just listening to artists talk about their process. We usually do this kind of like, Q&A intro, and then we watch the films together, and then a Q&A through each block. And like, I just really enjoy listening to artists speak about their process, because I too am an artist. I too am a filmmaker. And that's what's so wonderful about this too. Even the film festival program manager, Taylor, is an artist. She's an actor or filmmaker. And it's like, we too are the community we serve, and it's just so wonderful for us to all be able to come together and share our stories and talk about it together.
So many people have limited time these days and so forth. And so if there are, 2 or 3 films, whether they are shorts, whether they are full features that people absolutely need to see, in your opinion, what are they?
Tony K. Bambara. I know it's opening night. I brought my copy of Salt Eaters with me, to the festival, just to like have her memory with me, because she is so impactful in the Black feminist tradition, the Black radical tradition. And then also like we have a closing night kickback that's going to be at Metier Brewing, and it's right up the street, and I can't wait. And also I'm gonna have to leave early, because our closing night film, which is Teaching America How to Build a Library, I like the trailer. It just blew my mind. I even we have access to the films, but I'm waiting to watch the films with everybody on Sunday, which no, truly, because it's something about watching movies with Black people too, right? It's something like we're so incredible and knowing and hilarious. So it's like that part. And then I have to mention too that all of Sunday, the screenings, the workshops are free. Thanks to like some generous supporters, we have this free public access program where, yes, you can buy a pass. Yes, you can buy a ticket to your favorite movie. Also come through. All of our workshops, are free. And then all of Sunday is free as well.
Yeah, I think one thing that I thought was super exciting about this is that workshop aspect, like people just getting to talk about the craft and like really nerd out about filmmaking, and then be able to actually, watch films together, enjoy them together. So, okay, this film you just mentioned, you said that you were super excited by just seeing the trailer. What about it got you excited?
Yes. So I'm watching 2 women have a problem where like their entire library is full of all of these colonial narratives and stories. They're not seeing themselves reflected in it. And then I'm watching 2 women over time, through different ways, build and design and create and hold space for their community. I'm always going to gravitate. That's why I'm here. I'm always going to gravitate to those of us doing this type of cultivation work. It's absolutely powerful. And that's why filmmaking is powerful. And to your point about nerding out, last year we debuted our second festival. We do 2 festivals each year, and that's the Seattle Black Nerd Festival. And that returns this August 28th to 29th. And so we have 2 wonderful festivals that are both, again, holding space for us to share our stories, and also to your point about the workshops, practice our craft. There's a workshop, A is for acting agentially, where you can come here and learn how to act.
I love that, Jed. I just love the intersection of Blackness and nerdness, because I'm right there with the 2.
I'm right here with you. For real.
I do want to ask you, just because we live in a society now where there's just so much consolidation, when it comes to media and Hollywood, and where you have, Disney, you have Paramount, one of the criticisms are they make content now, right? They, Netflix, they're making stuff for the second screen as opposed to actual art. And so why do you think festivals like this one are so important to actually elevate and platform, true auteurs and artists, who are making films, not just making content?
So like last year at our Nerd Festival, we have this Young Entrepreneurs program. And these young people, like for 12 weeks, they're in these workshops learning how to create their own business, design, and sell their products. And they got the opportunity to sell at Nerd Fest during our block party. And like one of the young people, she had a shirt on and she said, "Make content, not art." And so like now I just feel like I just teleported over here, first of all. So I had to share that story because I feel like what the difference is like art is providing records of our being here. And I feel like you can talk about his story, her story, their stories, but like history in the sense of like, again, like, more colonial state places such as like museums, institutions, like things that we are taught in schools primarily. Or you can think about the filmmakers who are sharing their films with community, building their films up as its own archive, as its own worthy of beingness, You know, that's what to me art is as well. It's a deeper storytelling that is so important, has been so important for our community, and knowing who we are and remembering who we are.
And I would say this too, for even if folks aren't super into film, you know, just go to the festival, because it is like the opening night is one of 3 days
Exactly.
in Seattle that people actually dress up. So I mean, it looks like Atlanta on an everyday, like it's just folks dressed to the nines. And so if nothing else, just drive by, you know.
Truly.
Anyway.
People are actually bringing it fashion-wise instead of just phoning it in. I also feel like making space for just more filmmakers. Like, one thing that I've heard from friends who had participated in the South Asian Film Festival was that often when they had gone to like bigger film festivals or events and met up with potential producers or directors to collaborate with, a lot of them were white. And a lot of them were like, we only really want your story if there's like a certain level of suffering involved. Like, there's a very specific eye that they had towards what they wanted to see from a South Asian filmmaker. And I feel like the more folks who are building space for and building power for these communities to tell their own stories instead of having to have that gatekeepy lens of who is currently in power greenlight a film, I think there's something really powerful about that as well.
I 100% agree. For me, like, as someone who is proud and able to say, confident and audacious enough to say, hey, I'm an artist now. I had my first film in last year's film festival, a film in which I was experimenting as a college student before I knew who I was, you know, that kind of thing. This type of festival provides that opportunity. And then also, again, thinking of artists who like are even interested in filmmaking, or they've been practicing and then questioning, am I worth, you know, this provides such a space to like, just to like learn alongside with other people, network. You know, we have like our filmmakers brunch on Sunday every year. That is I'm like blown away, first of all, by who I'm in the room with, but also I'm watching people just connect with one another to build space, build capacity. Collaboration is so necessary. And I'm learning, you know, in my ascension as a filmmaker is this like, once you start actually collaborating with people who also hold similar visions to you, the art just goes even more beyond.
Absolutely. And I just want to say, Jas, for the listeners who have never done it before, there is something about seeing, particularly in Seattle, that is what's almost 70% white. There is something about seeing a Black movie with a predominantly Black audience. Like, I remember when the first Black Panther came out, there was a group led by Jasmine Scott at Now of Art Noir. She just completely rented out a theater specifically for the Black community of Seattle to watch the first Black Panther movie. And I will tell you that night, seeing it versus, you know, contrasting that with other nights that there were not that many Black people and I was watching that movie, it is almost like two distinct experiences. It was truly this communal experience, right? It's the reason you sort of go to the movies to, in some way, just feel this sort of this catharsis, if you will. And I think that's what great art does. And that's what, you know, every time that I've gone to the Seattle Black Film Festival, that's what I've experienced.
Jas, if folks want to learn more about the Seattle Black Film Festival, where can they go?
Absolutely. I had to make sure I get this link correct, y'all. So if you want to learn more and also get your tickets, because it is happening now all weekend, both in person and following this weekend on virtual as well, please follow this link, sbff26.eventive.org. That's sbff26.eventive.org. Or you can always visit langstonseattle.org. And that's our website for the org too.
Jas Moultrie, Development Manager for the Langston Theater, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank y'all again.
We'll have to check back in August for the Seattle Black Nerd Festival. I have a feeling someone, maybe Marcus Harrison Green, might want to go to that. Marcus, thank you for joining us today.
It's always a pleasure, Jane. Thank you.
Also wanted to give a special shout out to our CityCast Seattle neighbors that have just joined us, Alex L., Kim R., Seth S., and Ash M., who says that CityCast Seattle has become a part of my morning routine for the last few months. It's a great way to start my day. And as someone who doesn't have social media, I like that it gets me caught up on local politics, happenings, and discussions. Ash, thank you so much for joining us, and more power to you for not being on social media. I respect that so much. If you all also want to join as a CityCast Seattle neighbor, you can do that at membership.citycast.fm/Seattle, and it'll get you access to our bonus segment, which is going to air right after this. So if you're a neighbor, stay tuned. That's all for today here at CityCast Seattle. I am your host, Jane Sihu. Our executive producer is Ashley Smith. Our creative producers are Sam J. Leeds and Liam Billingham. Post-production this week was done by PJ Shahamat. Our audience development manager is Ben Keenan. Music is by Aaron Taylor Waldman, All the Kimonos, and Los Mocachetes, with additional mixing by Tyler Lindgren. Our ad music is by Sven Lindvall and Sarah the Instrumentalist from Epidemic Sounds via Getty Images. And listeners, remember, we love hearing from y'all. You can send us an email at seattle@citycast.fm. You can also always text us or leave us a voicemail on the CityCast hotline at 206-880-3931. Until next week, see ya, Seattle.